Hey, what's poppin', y'all? It's your boy Guardy3, and welcome back to the morning show. And of course, joining us, just like every morning, he is Mo Better. How you doing, Mo?
I'm doing great on a fun Friday, coming off two great games last night in the NBA. One ended in 6, and one is going to have those two magical words, Game 7. Let's get it.
Yeah, absolutely. And we did a whole watch along to pit the Nuggets, not the Nuggets, to the Knicks and Pistons, and that was a ton of fun. So why don't we just hop right into talking about Game 6? We had Clippers versus Nuggets, and it was competitive all the way to the very end. So we had another great game. I I gotta say this though, Mo. Game 7, gonna have to see a better Michael Porter Jr. Like,
Yeah, it was a complete no-show. Now, some of that was how the Clippers played him, but he had opportunities. He was just missing shots. And look, if Porter Jr. is not going to shoot a high percentage on catch and shoots, he doesn't have a lot of value because he can't really put the ball on the floor.
yeah, saying the Nuggets overall, they had a great offense yesterday. Like over 40% from three, over 50% from the field. That's one of those games where you're kind of frustrated that you couldn't get it done because you're just like, we shot well, our offense was great. So I'm excited to see what changes they'll make for Game 7 and adjustments. And all I know is it'll be a great one.
They got great shooting games from Christian Brown, Russell Westbrook. Aaron Gordon had a big game for them. Jamal Murray had a big first half. He didn't do as much in terms of scoring, but he did finish with like 8 assists, so he found value. Joker had a good game. He didn't have a dominant game, but he was very good. Again, I would credit that to the fact that Zubac, he can't stop Joker. No one can stop him, but I think Zubac is big enough and long enough that he can make Joker take tougher shots. He does make him work better than anybody I've seen that's guarded Joker. The interesting part, as you pointed out, is Denver was tremendous offensively. If they scratch their heads and wonder why they lost because they weren't nearly as good defensively. I thought James Harden and Kawhi Leonard pretty much got whatever shot they wanted. We talked about this before the game where I predicted it. Expect a big game from Norman Powell, which you got. You got a big game from Kawhi Leonard. To his credit, James Harden led the way. He set the pace for the Clippers, continually getting Jamal Murray. He hunted Jamal Murray and he exploited that. So I thought it was an offensive game. If you like offensive basketball, there was a little bit of defense mixed in, but it was primarily a scorer's game. It favored the Clippers.
Yeah, absolutely. And then we might as well have some fun too. Obviously, the Knicks, they're moving on. They have a date with the Boston Celtics. Mo, how do you think that series goes? We finally got that matchup locked in. So this is what the Knicks built their team to do: get a lot of wings and try to compete with the Boston Celtics. So
I hope that the wings that they have, when you go OG, Mikal Bridges, Josh Hart, I hope they do a better job of competing against Jason Tatum in this series coming up versus what they've done against him in the regular season, because he's pretty much carved all of them up at will. And I think what they're going to have to try to do is muck the game. If the Knicks want a chance to win or make this a long series, they have to muck it up. They have to make it a lot like the Pistons series, more of a grinded out series, because if it's free flowing and you're talking about both teams at their best, they're going to get swept. I think that in this series, for it to be a great series, yes, Brunson has to be prolific, but Karl-Anthony Towns has to be impactful in this series. He's got to be what he was in the regular season. He's got to give you 25 points, 12 rebounds, be able to stretch the floor with his shooting from three. He's got to be one of the better players in the series. He can't do what he did yesterday, kind of disappear. He finished with 10 points. That's not going to do. If you're going to get 10 points a game or 15 points a game, Karl Anthony Towns, then the Knicks will get swept no matter what Brunson does.
Say, morning, Andre.
Morning, Andre.
It's gonna be. I mean, okay. I think that Brunson could get to 30, but I don't think it would be an efficient 30.
Yeah, he will. I do agree with Andre. He'll average 30, but the question will be, is he going to get you 30 shooting 47, 48%, or is he going to get you 30 shooting 40%, which is a big difference.
John Starks, Malachi Starks, Jordan Sparks, Lakers or Celtics in 5.
That's our guy, Kyle Edwards. Kyle, look, I'm a huge fan of what your Celtics have done over the last few seasons. I predicted that they would repeat. I'm not changing off that prediction. Like I said, it's going to take a Herculean effort to me for the Knicks to beat the Celtics. And mind you, Drew Holiday's got a hamstring injury. He might not play much in this series at all. And I still think I would favor the Celtics because you can still put Derek White on Brunson. You can put Jaylen Brown on Brunson. Like what the Celtics have is both defensive and offensive versatility, and they have multiple lineups. Like it will take Herculean efforts. You'd have to have the best version of Cat, the best version of Brunson, and then a third guy come along. And even then, we're talking about making it a 6-game series. I'm not even saying they're going to win. The best version of the Celtics versus the best version of the Knicks. At best, that's a 5-game series.
It'll be interesting to see how the Celtics decide to defend the Knicks, because I could very well see them putting I could see them putting Porzingis on Josh Hart. Listen, when it comes to Karl Anthony Towns, sometimes he decides that he really doesn't want to be that aggressive. And we've seen the Celtics put one of their other forwards, or even at times Drew Holiday or a guard on centers before. So I'll be interested to see if they actually match up Porzingis on Cat, or is it going to be? Are they going to maybe put Brown or Tatum on Cat and then let Kristaps roam off Josh Hart?
I think that's exactly what's going to happen. They're not going to match Porzingis straight up with Towns. That matchup may occur through a switch, but I think primarily, like you said, Porzingis is going to be guarding Josh Hart, and he will be the weak side help defender, which he's terrific at, by the way. And let's face it, as talented a player as Karl Anthony Towns is, you can guard him with smaller players. We just saw the last series. The Pistons were very successful guarding him with Tobias Harris. So, yes, I think you'll see Jason Tatum on him. You will also see a lineup that features Porzingis and Al Horford at times, and Al Horford will guard him. So, I need an aggressive Karl Anthony Towns. I need an efficient Jalen Brunson. I need both those things if I want a really good series. But if the Celtics come out with purpose and they come out focused and aggressive, look, it's just it's a handful for anybody to beat the Celtics in a series. I think it's even more challenging for the Knicks because of their playing style.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Yeah, for the Knicks to win, Bridges needs to play like a guy worthy of all those picks.
Yeah, I'm there. I think Bridges needs to have a series where he averages over 20 a game, plays elite defense, and shoots a high percentage. He has to look like an all-star caliber player in that series. I agree, but not alone. Like you still need Brunson and Towns to be the effective number 1 and 2 options, but Bridges has got to be consistently that third guy.
This is a big series for Bridges, considering he's a free agent next year. It's weird with Bridges, right? Because he is a free agent next year, but also, if you're the Knicks, can you really afford to let him walk after what you paid to give up for him? It feels like Bridges is pretty safe to get a max or close to it anyway, regardless of what happens.
I think he will get a max or close to it from the Knicks. If he hits free agency, and he does have value to a lot of teams, but he actually checks the boxes for your team. He checks the boxes for my team. A 6'6", 6'7" wing that can defend and is capable of giving you 20 on a given night. He checks the boxes, but he checks the boxes in the way that a guy who's a third or fourth option checks the boxes. I'm not a team that, even though I would want Bridges, I'm not paying him a max salary because he's not a max player to me.
Yeah, I think the only guy the max player to at this point is the Knicks. Like, because they already gave up the 5 picks to get him. And
Correct.
when you make that level of investment in a player, you kind of don't have that much of a choice besides pay him. Otherwise, this is going to look like one of the worst trades in recent memory.
Look, if they lose him in free agency outright, Leon Rose and his staff are probably getting fired. You have to not only keep him, you are going to have to give him a max contract.
Yeah, what's up, Carmike? Yeah, say another news around the NBA. The Suns, they have a new general manager. Gregory is now the GM of the Suns. Did James Jones get fired, you ask? Nah, he got a promotion. Like, were you as stunned as I was when you heard that, Mo? Like, I thought that was pretty wild.
Yeah, you're the architect of the destruction of our franchise. We're in the lottery and we don't have any lottery picks due to your dealings. I think you need a raise. Nice.
Yeah,
Nice.
no, that caught me so off guard. I'm like, I saw new GM. I'm like, oh, James Jones is gone. They're like, nah, they're promoting him. I'm like, huh? What did he do to get a promotion?
If it's one of those promotions where it's not really a promotion, where he's like in charge of community services, then I get it because you just want him out the way. It's funny because I believe James Jones also has ties to Clutch Sports. I think he started off being a good young GM, and then he made a panic move. He made like 4 or 5 panic moves that have put the Suns franchise into the situation that they're in. They're in a tailspin. No assets, an older squad that's not good enough, never mind to compete for a title. They can't even make the playoffs. I don't even know their way out. Like the reality is they have to be bad enough to be in the lottery again. By the way, they are a lottery team, but they don't have lottery picks, which is insane to me. They're going to have another lottery-like year. And if I'm Devin Booker, I'm not signing up for that.
The new GM now. The Suns need a new roster. Yeah,
Facts.
Yeah, that's wild that they did all that work just for the Rockets to get a lottery pick. Like, it's kind of scary that the Rockets are getting one, considering how good they were, and now they have another asset. You can get a young player. You can trade the swap. Like,
yeah, that's interesting. I'm glad you brought that up. If you're Houston, sure, you can look at the draft and go, well, it's obvious we need a scorer. We need a scorer, an athletic scorer that can get buckets, or we can take that pick, and I'm assuming it's going to be a top 5 pick. We can trade that pick in a package and get an established scorer, i.e. the guy that you said was going to be on Houston next season within the next couple of years. Maybe they're a little ahead of schedule. They put together a package, by the way, a much needed package for the Phoenix Suns, and they get Devin Booker.
yeah, I could absolutely see it. Honestly, I'm curious like how many prospects that like they have on their list that, right? Because I'm sure they have like a nice little draft board, and I'm curious if they're like, okay, if we can get our hands on like these 5 prospects, we'll keep the pick. If not, we'll look to move it.
My guess is, knowing Coach Udoka, he's not even thinking about the prospects, unless, and this applies to every team that's in the lottery. Every team that's in the lottery, unless for whatever reason the Houston Rockets end up with the number 1 pick, well, then you know who's going to be a Houston Rocket.
Oh yeah. All of a sudden, the Suns are going to be calling like, "Hey, do you want Durant or Booker? We'll take our pick back." And
Right.
Rockets hang up the phone.
Whoever gets that number 1 pick, depending on the situation and the shape of your franchise and your roster construction, at least for the next couple of months or so, you're the most powerful team in the NBA. And it's easy to say, like, well, if you've got that number 1 pick, you go ahead and get Cooper Flagg. Maybe, and not because I don't believe he's going to be a special player. I'm just wondering what your franchise's health is overall. Like if Cooper Flag, let's say we think the worst team in the NBA is probably the Jazz or the Hornets. Yes, he immediately makes you relevant, but carrying the weight of a franchise, of a very bad franchise, I don't know if everybody's cut out for that immediately. So it'll be very interesting. Maybe they get more value for the pick. I know that if you're a team that thinks you're like a beat away from going from out of the playoffs to maybe being a top 4 or 5 team in your conference or more, you would gladly take that pick and go, it's on. We're ahead of schedule. And I think that's where Houston is. If Houston gets that pick, they don't need to trade anybody. They need to just plug him into the lineup and let him do what he does, along with the dogs that they already have.
Yeah, and and it's funny now because there are some teams that have stockpiled picks to a point where, I'm sure, Flag, that number one pick with Flag will be pretty untouchable, but hey, they're only team to get some convincing, throw some convincing offers out there.
What if you're Oklahoma City, who, by the way, I don't know how Sam Presti does it. They've got 1,000 picks, right? Like they have a young roster who's one of the top teams in all the NBA, has a legit shot to win the title, and they have a ton of picks. If they threw multiple picks at you, and let's say they added some value like to the picks with J-Dub or a Chet Holmgren, would you take that package?
It's tough because if Cooper Flag's the guy that everybody thinks he's going to be, then
you're going to say no.
You're going to say no, right? But it is tempting. Or like the Spurs might have multiple lottery picks if they get picks like 2 and 10, and they also have like a ton of picks, and they just start piling picks. Like if you can't get Cooper Flag, or if you have the chance to get Dylan, let's say Dylan Harper, the son of Ron Harper, like pick 10 and like 8 other picks to go with it, like do you turn that down? Like,
correct.
There are some teams that can make this draft really interesting just in terms of the trade package that they can offer for that number one pick.
And I think that's what I'm thinking, because the reason why I float the Oklahoma City move is we both set? Do we think that Chet Holmgren is a finished product? Because I actually think Chet Holmgren has the talent and the potential to not be just an all-star, but I think he can develop into maybe a superstar caliber player.
No, I think Chet definitely could. I think he's still going to end up being the second most important player on the Thunder if he's not already.
I don't disagree with that.
And I think that he does have superstar potential, even just off like his unique ability defensively alone. But the fact he can step out and splash threes at an elite rate too already, and it would be tough for me to part with him if I were the Thunder.
Right, because you're talking about a guy that is going to be, I think, when he's fully healthy and he's added a little bit more weight, but which he said he's working on, you're talking about an all NBA defender that can also add 20 points and 10 to 12 rebounds. Those guys don't just grow on trees. And he's unique in that he's a big man, but he's a big man, much like Wemby, who's comfortable on the perimeter, who's comfortable in putting the ball on the floor. That's a unique skill set.
Yeah, absolutely. And of course, we have one other matchup that's already set. Of course, we're talking about Cavs Pacers. Pacers have been on a hot streak since January, but I think they've met their match, Mo. This is going to be tough. And I think this could be a very tough series for the Cavs as well. I think this will be an interesting 6-game series, but I'm taking the Cavs.
I'm taking the Cavs. I think multiple games in this series will be close. And yet I don't think it's going to be a 6 or 7 game series. I think it's the Cavs in 5, but I think there are going to be some close games.
Oh, fair enough. Would you take a treasure trove of picks to move Giannis out of Milwaukee? I will say this. I I'm only moving Giannis out of Milwaukee if he wants to move out of Milwaukee. Like, I'll let him make that choice. He's more than earned the right. At the end of the day, if he wants to move, we will get a treasure trove of picks. That'd be great. But I don't want to rush him out of Milwaukee. Even if we're kind of just middling at the end of the day, like, Giannis is a guy who's kind of earned the right to choose. If he wants to stay, we just continue to try to make moves to attempt to compete around him. But if he wants to go, then yeah, let's go get the best package available. But I think the choice at this point should just be entirely up to Giannis.
I'm with you on that, partner. We talked about this a couple of days ago. We talked about it last night. If I'm the Bucks, because transcendent players don't just come around whenever you want them. I'm holding on to Giannis. I would like him to finish his career as a Buck, unless he's telling me something different that I love it here. I've loved my time here, but I'm ready to move on. If we have that conversation, then I start thinking about trade partners. And you and I had this conversation, and we already picked out 2 franchises that we think they should have that conversation that would be interesting trade partners, be it the San Antonio Spurs and the Oklahoma City Thunder.
Yeah, absolutely. I've heard. I still think some of these teams that they mention in these few potential trade packages are so funny. They're like, "Oh, Giannis is going to go to Brooklyn." Like, haven't we already said that he wants to win? Like, why would he go to Brooklyn if he wants to win?
He's not going anywhere in his prime at age 30 to be the centerpiece of a rebuild. He's wherever he goes. This much I know. Even like San Antonio, he can step in and they're going to be perennial and they're going to be a contender. Oklahoma City already established a contender. He's going to go somewhere like that. You're not going to see Giannis playing in a Hornets or a Jazz jersey. I promise you.
Yeah, it's funny. I think Brooklyn does have a lot of nice pieces, and I think they're maybe like, I think they need the guy per se to compete, but I also think they'd be looking for the guy next to the guy. I think the Nets have a lot of really nice like rotational pieces, but not only would they need to get Giannis, they would have to bring in somebody else too, because I don't think they have the guy, the star player you need to play next to the superstar player. So
I'm with you on that. I love that. That's a fact. That's so fact and spot on. And look, I just saw what Kyle said. Right. The funny thing about that is I've seen the rumors for Giannis going to the Knicks. I swear I've seen or heard those rumors for like the last 5 years. I don't think, first of all, again, I don't think Giannis is going anywhere. But if we're gonna have the conversation of what if, I don't see how he would go to the Knicks, because I don't think there's a package the Knicks could put together that the Bucks would find attractive. Because you'd have to be moving Towns, maybe Towns and Bridges and some picks, which isn't a bad package, but I think there's other teams that can offer a better one.
Yeah, absolutely. Like, obviously the Knicks could very easily match salaries, but at the end of the day, like, if I'm the Bucks, like, I'm not really jumping to be like, oh, let's add Bridges, let's add Cat, because those two, either one as a number one option. Like, we see what happens when teams are led by them. They're just lottery teams. They're not good. So I'm all good on that. I know Bridges, he played for half a year, and the Nets made the playoffs that 1 year. That's not going to sell me, because that team was already making the playoffs with KD and Kyrie before they got traded, and then they actually had a losing record after those two got traded, but they were in such a good spot. So at the end of the day, like, I'm not looking to build a team around Bridges or Cat. So to me, like, the Knicks would have to get a third team involved and get some assets that I'm really looking forward to.
I agree. Like I said, this is the fun part of the NBA. No league, including the NFL, no league is more intriguing in their offseason with the hypothetical trade moves or free agent pickups or acquisitions or draft rumors. The NBA is the best offseason soap opera in all of sports. It's not even close.
No, I completely agree, and it's going to be another fun one. I'm definitely looking forward to it. Yeah, I'm excited to see what moves the Bucks make in free agency. Granted, we don't have the money to make any big splashes, but I'm sure there'll be some like minor names that we'll be able to target.
So let you know what, I actually have a list of names that are not star names, but I think they're players that can help you win, that can help that could be good fits. Here's one. What about a player like Lonzo Ball, fully healthy? I think Lonzo Ball is a 3-and-D guy. I know what he initially people thought he was going to be, but I think what he's turned into when he's fully healthy is a terrific 3-and-D guy who's he moves the ball. The ball is live when it's in his hands, but that doesn't necessarily mean that he'll be the one that get the assist. But I think Lonzo Ball has a lot of value as a defender, as a second playmaker, and as a 3-point shooter.
I would love Alonzo Ball on my team. He would be an absolutely great fit.
How about this name? Luke Kennard.
I would take Luke Kennard.
I think the Lakers, I think a lot of teams need a guy that's a dead-eye shooter who's not a great defender, but he does try to compete on that end of the floor. Right, and I get it, Kyle. The question marks with Lonzo will be health, but if he is healthy, I'm not projecting him as a starter. I think Lonzo, for him to have a long career at this point in his career and where his body is at, I think the best part to get value out of him is him coming off the bench, your first guy off the bench.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Yeah, I'd say it's funny because like you said, we're going to be targeting the same people in free agency. I'd imagine.
How about a guy like Quentin Grimes?
Oh, I would love Quentin Grimes. I think he's going to get a nice raise this offseason. I would definitely love it.
But is it going to be by the Sixers? Because they've already got a ton of big contracts on that roster. And I think that what Grimes did, he established himself that he's a capable, I don't want to say third option. I think you could put him at a third option, but I think his strength would be as a fourth option because he's more of a he's more of a defender who showed he can score if you put him in the right position. Like, I don't want to go too crazy over Quentin Grimes averaging around 25 a game the last stretch of the season because that's a factual thing. It happened, but I want to remind everybody it happened on a team that wasn't trying to win. It happened on a team that was still getting the break speed off of it. So, look, putting up big numbers when you're getting ran, I think sometimes that can be fool's gold. Like, somebody out there is looking at Quentin Grimes and going, I think he could be a number one or a number two. Those are the kind of GMs that get fired. He's not that. He's a complimentary scorer. I think Quentin Grimes is kind of in the same vein as Mikal Bridges or slightly lesser than. Anybody that thinks he's more than that, you're not really paying attention to what's going on.
I was going to say 25 a game. Yeah, that for half a season. Yeah, he's literally doing what Mikal Bridges did for Brooklyn, and then that's how you end up paying 5 first for Mikal Bridges. So
right. How about Duncan Robinson? What value does he have from the Heat?
He's definitely somebody I would take a chance on if I were Milwaukee. I know the defense is always going to be suspect with him, but somebody who's a pure gunner who'll just not scared to take threes, like, yeah, he's somebody that would fit in Milwaukee.
Another guy that I think people are going to have interest in, I think the Bulls are going to make a big decision on, is Josh Giddey. Josh Giddey is set up to get that big extension. The question is, where do you value Josh Giddey at money-wise? Because I think he's one of those jack of all trades, but he's not really dominant at any one thing.
I think he's going to get a nice raise. I think it's going to come from the Bulls. He's not somebody I would personally want for the Bucks because he is a guy that needs to really dominate the ball in order to really get his maximum value. And when Dame's out, that would work. because you kind of plays minutes away from Giannis's. But also, if I'm to sit there trying to play minutes gymnastics, trying to get him and Giannis on the ball as much as they need, and then eventually I'll have to add Dame back to that mix. Yeah, I don't think that'd be a great fit for Milwaukee per se, but I think a team like the Bulls, they're going to give him a nice raise. Maybe he makes like $30 million a year, whatever, on his next contract, and all parties are happy.
So let me ask you this question: what about guys that we would call low risk, high reward guys? I'll give you an example. What do you think? Like a guy like Bol Bol.
He did show some flashes. He's always shown the potential to be something special, right, or something really fun. If our head coach is willing to give him some burn, yeah, that's a chance I'd be willing to take if I were the Bucks. Like that, I feel like that's the kind of talent they need to target. They need to target these, the cheap but high reward kind of players, and I think Bol Bol, fit that description perfectly.
Another guy that I think teams are going to take a look at, because again, they know what he can be, even in a different role or more as a rotational player. This guy's been talked about off and on for the last 5 years. Where are you at on Ben Simmons?
I think he can fit certain teams. I think he's done great with the Clippers. So, good for him to rebuild his value. I think he'll definitely get some offers this offseason. I almost think that it'd probably just be best for him to go back to the Clippers. Like, he seems comfortable there. He seems to really like it. And they found a way to really make it work with him. So I would like to see him go back to the Clippers, honestly.
I think Ben Simmons is a high-level role player. And it's funny, I get it, because people are like, this guy used to be an all-star, and I get that. But let's just assume that that's done. He's in another stage of his career where he's kind of reinvent himself as a very effective role player, which I think he can be. You are talking about a 6'10" guy that can guard all 5 positions defensively at a high level. And to end a possession, he can grab the rebound, and he can instantly turn into a playmaker in the open floor. So he does. I think he has a lot of value in that way. And if you told me, well, Mo, let's say Ben Simmons averages 7, 7, and 7, I'll take that. And the 7 points, to me, those are just cherry on top. If he gives you 7 rebounds and 7 assists in all NBA defense, I'm good.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. Like I said, he's done a great job at rebuilding his value. And I hope the best for him, and I hope that continues. I hope the key with him is always like he's just got to maintain that level of just confidence that he's been playing with on the Clippers, and just carry it over to wherever he goes next. I could see him going there. Obviously, the Nuggets just, played with Westbrook. They could probably use a defender like Simmons.
By the way, I didn't want to cut you off, partner, but by the way, so did you watch the game last night, Nuggets and Clippers?
Yeah.
So we'll both agree, for 95% of that game, Russell Westbrook was terrific. And then late in the game, he blows that layup. It is the Russell Westbrook conundrum. He's good for your team, but he can be bad for your team. I guess what it is he was terrific, and then he has those moments that make you, as a head coach, just lose it. And that was a pivotal miss that actually impacted the outcome of that game.
It was a 5-point swing, because then the Nuggets, the Clippers went down and nailed the 3 on the other end. So that sequence was essentially just, they called game off that. So yeah, Russ is always just such an enigma, because nobody plays harder than Russ, and he's always going 100 miles an hour. But at the same time, part of the problem is he's always going 100 miles an hour.
Right.
And it causes him to make boneheaded decisions at times. Please, Ben, no workout videos this summer.
Yeah, Kyle. I co-sign on that. I don't want to see workout videos of Ben Simmons taking 25, 45 jump shots. I don't want to see that, because when the season comes and he starts to play, you know what he doesn't do? He doesn't take any jump shots. So I don't want to see that either.
Morning, Cottrell.
Hey, good morning, Contrell. The problem with Ben Simmons, I don't think it's nearly as much physical as it is mental. He's got a mental hurdle that he doesn't seem to be able to quite get over. Like, I think he's good with being a role player at this point in his career, Brett. Like, I think he's content with being one of the guys and not being like a star anymore. I think he's good with that. And that's not a bad thing. I just, like you said, I just wish that he could regain some of the confidence he had when he was an all-star caliber player.
Yeah, that's my favorite part. One of my favorite parts about NBA players releasing the workout videos, it's just them doing the most unserious things. It's not only Ben Simmons, though, right? Because we've seen it'll be like Andre Drummond will release a workout video of him hitting corner threes. And
Right.
we've seen Mitchell Robinson drop the same videos. Like, I'm like, great. Are you actually adding this to your game? Like, are we going to see it in the season? Or, like, why am I watching you shoot threes if you're never going to do it in game?
I remember years ago, Dwight Howard, when he was still in the league, he would dropped videos of him shooting threes, and I was like, "Come on, Dwight, come on."
That's a point where it felt like at a point LeBron was ready to pass him the torch. Crazy to see where he is now. Yeah. Hey, first it was Ben Simmons, and then it was supposed to be Zion, and things don't work out like we think they will half the time. It's pretty crazy.
It is weird because it's his story, like Ben Simmons' story. It could be made into a movie, because if you told me he was going to be the player that he was early in his career with the Sixers, that he was going to go 16, 8, and 8 for 10 or 12 years, then I would have told you Ben Simmons is going to be in the Hall of Fame. When you say 16, 8, and 8, and he makes 7, 8, 9 all NBA defensive teams, Ben Simmons would have been a Hall of Fame caliber player. And I'm saying that even if he didn't win a title, just his play would have garnered that, and all the acknowledgement and awards and things like that would have made him a Hall of Famer. And to see him go from that to a guy that, again, he's a good role player, but he's a good role player, Brett, when he's still in his 20s. Like, that's what's weird about it. We're not talking about Ben Simmons age 32, 33, no athleticism, well past his physical prime. And I know he's had some injuries. We're talking about a guy that's still in his mid-20s that mentally, I don't want to say he's checked out, but mentally, he's at a point where he's like, I'm not trying to be a star anymore. I'm completely good with being one of the guys.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, speaking of, workout videos and all that, I still loved the randomness of me too going onto Twitter, and the first thing I saw right before that Lakers Wolves game was Rudy cashing a three sitting on the bench. That was the funniest video to me, because I saw that and immediately messaged all the groups. I'm like, this game might be a wrap if Rudy's hitting threes sitting on the bench. Like, what in the world? I do love fun videos like that. So please drop more like fun, ridiculous videos. But yeah, I don't need to watch Drummond and Mitchell Robinson shooting 27 threes, hitting 23s in a row.
Yeah, look, Drummond is what he is. He's a really good offensive rebounder, maybe one of the best in the NBA over the last decade as an offensive rebounder. But his numbers in Detroit were a little, I thought they were inflated. He definitely was. I never thought at any point that Andre Drummond, even when he was putting up those big rebounding numbers, I never thought he was a centerpiece of a team, the kind of guy that you could build around.
No, yeah, and I didn't think so either. That's why that team was just so hilarious to me. Like they're trying to build around him, and then to complement him, they bring in like Greg Monroe, Josh Smith, and I'm just trying to figure out like what are you building? Like you're not even giving him any space to work, even if you do want to build around him.
Facts.
So just a very weird time in Detroit basketball
Let me
history.
ask you this. Another guy who's going to be an out and out free agent, who I think has a lot of versatility, and a lot of teams, obviously including the team he's currently on, is going to want his services. At what price, I don't know. Miles Turner. How do you feel about him?
I think Miles Turner has a. I think Miles Turner has a lot of potential to be a great addition. I think he's a great. I think he's a good player. I think he has his. I think he has his flaws, but I think he's a great weak side shot blocker who can also step out to the 3-point line for you. So I think he'd be a great addition, and I think a lot of teams will definitely sign up for the Miles Turner experience.
That's a good point. Um, they gave him Blake Griffin.
Yeah, Giannis and Cade. That's a duo. Just make sure you load up on shooters, right? Because it sounds good in theory, but if you try to just put Giannis and Cade together, they are absolutely just going to load up on the paint, especially if we're going to try to run Giannis, Cade, and Duran. So you better get some sharpshooters to surround those two.
I don't think you can play Jalen Duren and Giannis at the same time. There's no way. If you try that, you're compromising your offense. That won't work. And I don't think Detroit has anything. I don't think there's a package Detroit could put together that would make the Bucks be adequate. Be amenable to trading Giannis. Like who would you want off the Pistons other than Cade Cunningham in a trade for Giannis? You know what I mean? Like I don't see that there's a certainty. I'm certain he won't play for the Pistons. Miles Turner to the Lakers. I'm sure the Lakers would love to acquire Miles Turner, but what do the Lakers have to offer in return? They'd have to put together a package that would include that number one pick, and it'd have to be a really good player. That really good player would have to be Austin Reeves and probably another player. And I don't know. And why would Indiana go for that? Because I like Austin Reeves. I understand what he does. But if you've been watching the Pacers roster, they've got a couple of guys that are Austin Reeves like already. I don't think they need three of them.
Yeah. And at the end of the day, like, yeah, it'd be a great fit for the Lakers, but the challenge would be just figuring out something that the Pacers would want in return. Like,
right.
Can you really sell them? Like, do they really need like a Rui Hachimura? Like, I'm not sure about that, but Jalen Duren off the bench.
That's the only one that again, I get it, and that's how it would work. But I'd have to assume if you're trading Giannis to Detroit, guess who's one of the pieces that's coming back in return? Jalen Duren. He would be one of the pieces, and Jaden Ivey, and like 3 of your number one picks.
See, Giannis to the Spurs and Mike Malone to the Spurs. There we go. I say we were talking Giannis to the Spurs earlier. That'd be fun.
We were. Again, if they have that conversation, the Spurs are a great trade partner because of the assets that they have to get the Bucks can get back in return. So I'm here for that. If that should ever become a real conversation.
Austin Reeves looks too timid in the playoffs. LeBron and Luka need an outside shooters.
I don't think that Reeves was timid. I think that we underrate just how good defensively Minnesota is. They were locking down. They're a terrific team defense. And I seen Austin Reeves get guarded by McDaniels. I seen him get guarded by Anthony Edwards. Like, those aren't easy guys to get buckets on.
Yeah,
go ahead.
No, I'd say like the worst defender that the Timberwolves really can throw at you in half of these rotations is Mike Conley. But even though Mike Conley's old, he still competes on that end.
look at what Cottrell brought up. He brought up what you and I were talking about.
Yeah, I would love it. I would if we were trading. Yeah, if we traded Giannis and we somehow got Cooper Flag back. Like on one hand, obviously, wouldn't be thrilled with trading Giannis. That trade would never make me happy. But if Cooper Flag was the return, yeah, I guess I'd get over it pretty quickly. Or on the other hand,
I want to ask you a question. Did you see the Lakers post-game interview, or they did another interview last night with JJ Redick, and JJ Redick made the comments that we have some guys that are not in championship shape. He said, of course, there are some other guys that are in great shape, but there are a few more that are not in championship shape. Like, we know who he's talking about, right? Like, this isn't one of those things where, like, I wonder who he's talking about. Do you think that's a wise thing to do? Because I heard people say, like, well, you're supposed to be able to call your players out and hold them accountable. I 100% agree you hold your players accountable, but could JJ Redick and Luka not have a private conversation? Why did you have to do the media and do the because it's very LeBron, like, it's passive aggressive, like you know who you're talking about when you're talking about conditioning and shape, right? Who you're pointing at.
Yeah, it's funny. You could tell he was vague intentionally, so that if he's ever called out on it, like, I wasn't talking about Luka. I was talking about other players.
He's not talking about Dalton Connect. Come on, everybody knows that.
Yeah.
He's been slacking off. Of course, you're talking about Luka, but here's my thing: if I'm Rob Pelinka and I'm Jeannie Buss, I'm like, hey, this dude can leave after next season. Like, he was already catching strays from Nico Harrison. What we don't want to do is alienate him and go, basically, dude, you're the reason why we lost because you were out of shape. Even if some of that is true, I'm not making public. I'm not putting it public or pointing a finger to him about how he could be in better condition. I don't think it's a secret throughout the NBA and the sports world that Luka could be in better shape. What he doesn't need is, I don't think he needs his head coach going like, well, we're a good team, but we have a lot of guys that are not in championship shape. Like, who are you talking about? You know who you're talking about.
Let's see. Yeah, JJ Redick doesn't play any of the bench players. I think one of JJ Redick's, like, big flaws was once he got comfortable with the lineup, he really wouldn't deviate from it ever. And sometimes when you get into the playoffs, you kind of need to, deviate and be ready to change your plans on a whim, because sometimes your plan ain't working and you only have 4 games to figure it out. JJ did not have a great coaching series, but he was a rookie. So he'll learn. He'll do better next year. I have no doubt about it. That's the key. As long as he learns from his mistakes, I think he'll be.
Partner, I still think he's making mistakes. You guys lost in the second round to the Timberwolves. And yes, it's a factual statement to say that Luka's not in the best of shape. But had the Lakers won that series, what you wouldn't have said is, well, we're going to the second round, but still we got some guys that are not in championship shape. Like you can't have it both ways. And I think that's a rookie coach mistake to call Luka out, because we already know that. He already knows that. What I want to remind people is Luka got traded to the Lakers. Luka didn't say, I want out of the Mavs and I want to go play for the Lakers. And I would say be careful of taking shots at a guy who can pick and choose where he wants to go if he doesn't sign an extension with you. And if Luka doesn't sign an extension with you, that trade becomes one of the worst trades in NBA history the other way around, because you are left dead in the water minus Luka.
Say, look, it's funny because that's almost like what's nice about Luka putting on weight is he gained the ability to back guys down a lot better. But yeah, obviously that came with certain trade-offs at the end of the day. Yeah, he doesn't really have a lot of lift in his jumper. He was talking about Kleber. There we go.
I'm sure that's what he meant. I'm sure he meant he meant Kleber or Rui or somebody like that, but he definitely wasn't talking about Luka. Right?
Yeah, he absolutely was. Yeah, JJ had a rough series. I'm looking forward to seeing what he learned from that series. Yeah, LeBron has certain expectations next year, and they will change the roster. Curious to see how aggressive they get. I think they'll be maxed. I mean, I think they'll be really aggressive, right? And I think it's the mixture of, Pelinka actually just straight up saying, yeah, LeBron has certain expectations, but it's just what we said too. It's, hey, Luka's a free agent. Like, we got to make sure that he wants to resign here. So I think the Lakers will spare no picks or expenses to make sure this roster is new and improved coming into next year.
And I get that, and I'm sure that's the goal. And we just talked about a bunch of players that are good targets. They're not superstar names, but I don't think the Lakers are superstar away from being one of the better teams. I think that you need comparable players, and that's why I had that list of players. You want comparable players that can help elevate your stars. I still think the Luka LeBron partnership is not a finished. It's not a finished product because they got to kind of work out the kinks. We know LeBron can play off the ball. We also know that Luka can't play off the ball. I think he's got to be open to moving off ball and still being part of the offense even when the ball's not in his hands.
Yeah, absolutely. Even right, like he can. It's funny because Luka should be able to theoretically, right? Like we know he can shoot. He did it very well last year. Like we know he has it in him. You can also just move off the ball to maybe go seal some guy off in the post and maybe get a quick layup. Like there's just so much potential for Luka playing off the ball that just I would love to see him tap into that more. Say, yeah, no, and they definitely got rid of him because of, in the words of Nico Harrison, defense wins championships.
So, yeah, I'm sure Nico is somewhere right now firing up a cigar, feeling vindicated, right? Somewhere Nico actually thinks he has a flex where he can go, that's what I was talking about. That's what I mean. It's a horrible trade because he didn't get more back. I'm going to keep saying that. If you want to move a star like Luka, it's a great trade if you get value for the star. He didn't get enough back. That's why it's so horrible. And look, I'm a Laker fan. I do agree having a guy like Luka, if you can get him to that extension, yes, your team is going to be relevant. Your team is going to be a contender for the next 10 or 12 years. By the way, being a contender for the next 10 or 12 years, that doesn't mean you're going to win 4 or 5 titles. It just means you're going to be a contender. Because I do think because of Luka's skill set and his playing style, you have to put together a certain kind of roster around him. He's not an easy guy to play with.
And, it's really going to be a challenge to win multiple titles in the next, 5 to 10 years because you have multiple potential, dynasties coming up. Obviously, OKC's got, all those young guys under contract and 27 picks and just keep replenishing their roster with cost-friendly, contracts. The Spurs obviously have Wemby and, Fox. They have 2 lottery picks this year and the cap space to make a move. So
and they've got Castle and they've got Vassell. They've got complementary pieces around Wemby right now. Like it's scary because you're right. There are I think there's maybe 3 potential young teams that could become like powerhouses for the next 6 to 7 years. And so when you're the Lakers, yeah, Rob Pelinka's got to be super. And I don't want to just write this off to the Lakers. I think if you're the Bucks, if you're the Lakers, if you're one of those teams that you still have a transcendent player on it, you've got to be aggressive right now because these younger teams, they're coming. Like it should be a surprise to no one that fully healthy, never mind what they do in the draft, what they do in the offseason, but if you just took their roster right now, fully healthy, the Spurs are going to be a playoff team.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Yeah, that's the scary part. Giannis, Wemby, and Fox. Yeah, say Reeves does have arguably one of the best contracts in the NBA for sure.
Agreed. And Rob Palinka already said he's not moving Austin Reeves. I'm not telling him what to do or what not to do. I think you don't move Austin Reeves, but you also, no team is going to go, let's help the Lakers out and not get nothing in return. That's not going to happen either. So I think the Lakers are going to have to be really creative in the front office and find trade partners that are open to maybe getting expired contracts or including that number one pick. And I think that's easier said than done when you're competing for the same group of players with like 4 or 5 other teams.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I wouldn't be shocked too if this off season maybe they. I think one name to look out for down the move from the Lakers. I think that could see them very well. As weird as it is, I could see them moving on from Dalton Connect this offseason.
Well, look, they already tried to trade him before. They already tried to trade him before. So I think that I think if they do put together a trade package, Dalton Connect's going to be in that package as well. And that's interesting to me. I just think that it's fun when we talk about how they're going to change their roster. That sounds so much easier said than done. How about this? How about a veteran presence that can make winning plays like a Marcus Smart? What value does Marcus Smart still have in the NBA?
I'd say I think I'm like the right contract at this point. He's probably closer to like a minimum, like a maybe a mid level exception kind of player.
I agree.
I think he's still a positive player on the right contract. And I think a big part of JJ not playing Dalton is even when you did try to play him after that failed Mark Williams trade, his confidence just looked shot. Like he did not look like the same Dalton Connect that you saw for the first half of the year. As soon as that failed trade happened, it just all went down the drain almost for him.
Completely agree. He became disconnected. And how do you not become disconnected when you're a rookie and they're telling you how much you're part of their future, and then you find out you've been traded, but then the trade gets rescinded and you're back in that locker room where you weren't wanted. That's a lot. That's a lot for a young player to process. And I don't think he ever got over that. And I get it. The NBA is a business like any other business, but he's still a human being. And that kind of move, how does that not crush your confidence to a degree?
And how do you even like talk to him when he comes back? Like, ha, kidding, welcome back. Like,
right.
I'm not even sure how you handle that situation.
Like, what do they do? Like, hey, Dalton, man, my bad, bring it in. Like, is it really that easy? Is it that, like, I don't think it's that easy. And I think the damage is done in the relationship. So I do think whatever package the Lakers put together to make a deal with anybody, it's going to include Dalton Connect.
Yeah, say it's weird how that worked out because Dalton was like upset that he was going out, and Mark Williams is upset that he wasn't going out. He wanted out of Charlotte.
Absolutely. Would you not want out the Titanic? Yes.
Yeah.
If somebody came to me and said, Mo, this boat, some bad things are about to happen, bro, in a couple of hours. Here's a life raft. I'm getting on that life raft. I'm out of here. So yes, when I find out that, oh, it was just a joke, bro, there are no more life rafts. Yeah, I'm gonna feel some type of way. I gotta stay here and go down with the ship. Not cool.
Yeah, I'd say it. It's unfortunate. I was really looking forward to a Mark Williams, pairing with Luka and LeBron because I thought he was like the perfect center, but those medicals must have been really bad in order for them to go, yeah, you know what, we're good.
Right, because they had their medical staff, and then they went with an outside medical staff, and they all came to the conclusion like, this guy basically had the body buildup of Mr. Glass. You don't want any part of this.
No, absolutely. Lakers would have been better taking Williams to help with Gobert. Yeah, let's say Williams would have helped, but if those medicals were, even spot on, like you don't want to give up your 2031 first for somebody who might not even make it to 2031 for you guys, or it's just
Right.
gonna be banged up all the time.
Those medicals must have been like scary, where everybody was like, how is this guy walking around right now? Like they had to be that bad. And it's weird because he goes back to Charlotte and you're seeing highlights where he's catching lobs and blocking shots. And I'm like, he looks pretty good to me. There's got to be something in there that they said that they saw that's chronic that he's playing through because he's young, that really turned them off. Yes, the Lakers need a rim running big who can protect the paint, and it doesn't have to necessarily be a young guy, a guy that's going to be available who's a veteran, not a star, but I think he can star in a role. I think Clinton Capella could have helped the Lakers.
Well, listen, if you guys need one, I got a rim running forward for you guys. They say you're very familiar with him too. He played for you once.
Yeah, no, we're cool. We've been watching it. No, we're good. We're good. Like we wish Kuz all the best. No, we're good.
Listen, I'm trying to work the phones, get them moved. Nothing's happening.
I think if you're the Bucks and you call other teams, everybody's gonna want to listen to you until you mention the name Kuzma.
Yeah, maybe I could just like not put a name with the face. Be like, listen, we got a rim running forward. He plays some elite defense. Get him to agree to the trade before they realize it's actually Kuzma, not Giannis. I'm talking about.
Because they're gonna be like, no, that's not who we were talking about. Like, what's going on? Yeah. Look. This is the postseason is the best part of the NBA. So we're like in heaven right now, but also because teams get knocked out, because certain players at the end of their contracts or they're going into their lame duck season where they'll be a free agent, the conversation, the NBA conversation becomes very interesting. And look, the other kind of conversations become interesting, like because the Timberwolves took out the Lakers, Anthony Edwards, who I love, by the way, has every right to be vocally petty with anybody that picked the Lakers, because I just saw the video of him talking about doing the whole Lakers in 5 bit. He had a good time. He has every right. Anybody that's been watching that saw Shannon Sharp's whole bit about OKC, UFC, KFC, Lakers in 5, that's going to be viral. The funny part was Anthony Edwards said Paul Pierce has got a lot of. He's waiting to hear from Paul Pierce, because Paul Pierce said when Ant plays Luka again, it's going to be a different energy or something like that. And obviously, it was a different energy. They took Luka out. So, yeah, look, Anthony Edwards has every right to get in his petty. I'm here for it.
Yeah, I do find that the narratives kind of switched around, and it was a little weird. Like, it's so funny because when we watched Rudy run through like Durant, LeBron, and on his way to the finals, and it's like, oh, it was a weak path. But now that Ant just went through, LeBron and, the Suns, he's beaten both those guys, and now all of a sudden it's like, oh, he's conquering legends. Like, wait a minute. The narrative just 2 years ago when Jokic did it was, well, that was a weak run. But now that Ant's doing it, it's, oh, he's conquering all of our heroes. Like, I just love how the narrative has flipped so hard for just no good reason whatsoever.
And you can give credit what credit is due, but you have to do it in context. Yes, Anthony Edwards took out the defending champions. He took out the Nuggets last year, but he also got taken out last year. Like when you tell me that he took out KD and company last year, he did do that. But it's not like he did it in a year where he led the Timberwolves to the finals. That didn't happen. So, yeah, he does deserve some credit. But I think in the bigger overarching picture is I'm going to give Ant credit for his accomplishment, but the goal is to win a title. It's not to win a first-round series. So I think it's great that they won and beat the Lakers. It's going to be interesting to see who they face in the second round, and I think that's the winner of Golden State Houston, if I'm not wrong.
Absolutely. But I'd say, yeah, that's all the time we had for you guys today. Anything you want to add, Mo, before we get up on out of here?
Oh, no, I just appreciate the chat. The chat was really live, interesting, asking a lot of good questions, making comments. Thank you guys so much for joining us. Make sure you check out all the great content we have at Wire to Wire Network. Wire to Wire Network. Appreciate you guys.
No, but I got another forward for you. Listen, anything to get rid of Kuzma, man.
Wow,
Yeah,
Bronny.
that's I definitely appreciate everybody. That was a great chat. It was a great morning show. Thank you guys very much, and have yourselves a great weekend. And make sure to tune into Passion and Precision tonight.